listeners to Pleasure Principles, where we strip away the cliches and ditch the autopilot advice, and also get real about what it takes to create love, intimacy, and the connection that actually lasts. So, today we are diving into a topic that's often overshadowed by diamonds, Instagram worthy proposals, and the wedding countdown. What about the deep conversations that should happen before the ring hits the finger? Yeah. So, my guest today is someone who doesn't just believe in love, but she believes in conscious love. Please welcome LaShawn McCrary. So, welcome to the show, LaShawn.
Thank you so much for having me, Avik. I'm really delighted to be here with you today.
Amazing. And dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with LaShawn. So LaShawn is a conscious relationship coach, intuitive guide, and the author who helps couples and the individuals get real, get aligned, and love better. So through her book, I Am Not an Option, and her pre-engagement workbook, before we go any further, she invites us into soul level alignment, emotional intimacy, and the radical self truth. So, this is not about finding someone, but it's all about becoming the someone who's ready to show up fully and partnering with someone who can meet you there. So, whether you are dating, thinking about proposing, or wondering that if you should say yes, then this conversation could save you years of frustration and maybe even your marriage. So, let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Yeah. So, Lashawn, before we even talk about the engagement, what does a truly aligned relationship look and feel like to you? What do you say?
Wow. Well, that's a really great question. And for me personally, it looks like and it feels like, and I think that's more important to say that it feels like a connection and it feels like a safe space where you can truly be yourself and grow. And I think that's a very important part of relationships is when we know that we are with someone who loves us and is there to be supportive and be really caring and sharing even when we're not being our best. And that's not excusing it, but recognizing that all of us are in this phase of growth if we choose to, because some people don't choose not to grow. But for those of us who are, for me, that's what alignment looks like. Just like really being in this really great space, and we can love and we can grow together and we can share and really be at peace with who we are and who we are becoming.
Exactly. Exactly true. Yeah. Yeah. And like for the couples who are listening, what's the one sign they might think they are aligned, but actually they are not?
A sign where they may think that they are aligned, but they are not.
Mhm.
Well, I think that when people look at their relationship, right, it all begins with going inside yourself. So I would say the first place to start with your alignment is, are you as an individual aligned with the person that you are projecting to your partner? Because if you're not showing up as your authentic self, and you're doing things and you're saying things, but that's not really who you are, or if you know that you are intentionally lying and cheating and you're hiding and you're doing things like that, then first and foremost, you are not aligned within yourself. So, the first thing that people need to do, because a lot of times we look at our partners, but the first step of alignment is looking within yourself. Then after you've looked within yourself, and if you're being honest, and let's just say that your partner is being honest as well, are we on the same page? Because there can be two really, really good people, But if you're not taking your lives in the same direction, if you don't have the same belief systems, and it doesn't mean that you have to agree on everything, but you have to have more areas where you are in agreement so that you can continue to grow together. And if you see that, then that is a really great sign that you are aligned. But if you're seeing where it seems like, yeah, again, I'm a great person, they're a great person, we're a match in so many areas. However, we're not going in the same direction, then that's where it kind of looks like you're aligned, but you're not really aligned. Does that make sense, Avik?
Exactly. Exactly makes sense. Yes. I mean, I think that's huge because many people confuse the chemistry for the compatibility, and uh, those are not the same thing, right? So,
Well, and here's the thing though, it takes more than chemistry and it takes more than compatibility to sustain a relationship over a long period of time. Because what's going to happen is, yes, you will get together for the reasons that you are compatible, but it's how you handle the areas where you're incompatible. That's what's going to test the relationship. You know, if you're both foodies and you love the same sporting events and you love the same type of music and you love the same type of movies, and all of those things are great, but it's going to be the areas of the things that you maybe dislike about each other or maybe the things that you hate about one another. Those
mm,
are going to be the things that are going to test the relationship. So you want to know in advance, how are you going to handle those situations? What's that going to look like? And can you begin to do so in a way where you can either agree to disagree, or is one of you going to maybe, or possibly both of you, shift your perspective? What does that look like? So it's about having the continual conversations so that your relationship can continue to grow.
exactly. Mhm. Wow, that's amazing. And like your book talks about the relationship we have with ourselves being the foundation for all others. So, why is self love such a kind of non negotiable before committing to someone else?
Well, it's well, here's what's interesting. A lot of times it's already negotiated. So that causes many, many problems within the relationship because now you're going into the relationship. And if you haven't defined yourself, then the other person will end up defining you. So any boundaries that maybe you feel that you should have, you probably won't have those in place. So self-love is very, very important because it's a part of you standing in your personal power and then allowing yourself to love yourself first and foremost. And then you can share that love openly and freely with your partner because you already know who you are and what you want and what you like and what you dislike. And then the two of you can just blend your lives together.
Mm, exactly. Yeah. And so how can someone tell if they are in a place of genuine self love, like versus uh, just self confirmations and surface confidence? Like what?
You know, it's really a combination of things. You know,
Okay.
your self talk is big. If you have a tendency of saying a lot of negative things to yourself as compared to positive things, that's something that you want to work on within yourself. Because let's say, for example, you're consistently beating up on yourself, and that's going to lower your self esteem. And that's also going to affect the way that you show up in a relationship. So you want to, you know, check the way that you talk to yourself. You also want to check the way and really take a really good look at the way that other people treat you. You know, do you have boundaries where you feel that you should be respected? That, again, even if you have to agree to disagree with people, friends and family, and that's a normal part of life, but do you overall feel, pretty good about your self communications and then the communications that you have with others. How are you treating yourself? Do you excessively drink? Do you excessively smoke? Are you constantly running to things outside of yourself? Maybe even it's food, but things to help you feel good inside. And if so, that's where you want to go in, evaluate, and do the work so that you can begin to reinforce your strength and your power, which strengthens your self love.
Mm, lovely thing. Yeah. Wow. And I mean, in your walk with the couples, what are the most critical conversations like people avoid before they are getting engaged?
Ooh, it's really different for everyone because every couple is different. But I would say if I was going to pick one thing, I would say that it's fear. Fear that if we have these conversations, that it may end the relationship, which is why a lot of people just kinda push it to the side and tell themselves, "It's gonna be okay, and we'll work through it," because there's that fear of the lost, and, it can be many different the topic can vary, but the underlying feeling that I believe that most people struggle with is that fear because it's a fear that I may lose this person if I push them to talk about finances or if I push them to talk about children or a certain member of their family or something that happened. It's avoiding those conversations because of fear.
Mm, okay. And if a couple has already skipped those conversations, so how can they safely circle back? Say,
Well, you know, they have to muster up the strength to know that if it was an issue before, it's going to be an issue at some point in time in the future. So it may not be here presently, but at some point in time, it is going to show back up. So let's go ahead before we get angry about this situation and let's talk about it. Maybe you need to reach out to somebody, whether it's a relationship coach or a relationship therapist, but reach out to someone that both of you trust and feel comfortable with so that you can work your way through the situation. And that's something that I would really like to say to couples is that just because you're dealing with a difficult situation, it doesn't mean that the relationship has to end, but you do have to process the information. You do need to have the conversation because even when you don't have it verbally, many times people are showing up passively aggressively and they're saying things and they're doing things and they're acting out because there's something that they're feeling, but they're afraid to express it. And when that happens, it's still affecting the relationship, but your mate just really doesn't know why. But it's because there are some unresolved issues, and unresolved issues always cause problems later on.
true, exactly true. Yeah. And and yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that doesn't make the wedding and Pinterest board, right? But
Right.
it's
Yeah, right, right. It
dreadful
doesn't.
challenge. Yeah. And like men and emotional vulnerability. I mean, this is still a kind of sticking point in many relationships, right? So what's the one way a man can open up without feeling like he is losing himself?
Well, the first thing I would say to any guy is you first have to look at the relationship that you're in because there are some men, unfortunately, who are in relationships where it's not safe for them to open up. And it really breaks my heart to say that, but sometimes men are in relationships, and if they are vulnerable, that woman is going to receive it as him being weak. So, first and foremost, he needs to know his mate. And I would say for anyone who is maybe newly dating, you want to make sure that you are with someone that is opening the door for you to be vulnerable. Because if
Mhm.
you don't feel that you can share some of your innermost thoughts and feelings and maybe some events that happen throughout the course of your life that caused you a lot of pain, if you're unable to share that with that person who may become a mate or a partner, a spouse later on in the future, do you really wanna be with a person that you can't share those things with? So those are just some things for them to think about. So once you've looked at the person, then the next thing is, let's say that you feel that as a man that that person is safe, and it's just like, okay, so then you wanna just step into it lightly. You don't have to share the worst thing that's ever happened, but maybe just begin to share a little bit more about your thoughts, a little bit more about your feelings, a little bit more about what's on your heart. And as you begin to share a little bit more and you have those conversations with your partner, then you begin to see, okay, I can trust this person. And then you begin to relax a little bit more and a little bit more, but it's not something that you rush into. It's something that you ease your way into. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yes.
Definitely. Hmm. Yeah. So, and like, how can a woman create the safety that encourages that vulnerability?
Oh, I love that question as a follow-up question. And I would say that as a woman, you know, it's you have to make sure and go within yourself and ask yourself, what does it mean for a man to be strong? And then what does it mean for a man to be vulnerable? Because if you're equating vulnerability with weakness, then when he begins to open up to you, then you're going to see him as weak as compared to seeing him as being strong and sharing his emotions, because we don't get to decide what another person's vulnerability looks like. So, as a woman, we really have to ask ourselves, okay, what does this look like? And am I willing to reframe the way that maybe I think a man should show up? Is it okay for him
Mm.
to cry? It shouldn't have to be something extreme like the death of a loved one, or you find out that, a loved one is chronically ill. It shouldn't have to be that serious for it to be okay for a man to shed tears. But unfortunately, in many societies, that's exactly the way it is. So, as a woman, it becomes, again, having that conversation with yourself about what it looks like for a man to be strong, what it looks like for a man to be vulnerable, and am I willing to allow him to open up more of himself? If I'm saying I want him to be more vulnerable, am I ready for that? And what does that look like? And then coach herself into it. Or again, go somewhere and talk to a coach, talk to a therapist and say, hey, I recognize that I'm putting up these boundaries that's preventing my mate from fully opening up. Can you help me shift my perspective?
Hmm. True. Exactly true. Yeah. And wow. And I think like when that's missing, the relationship becomes a kind of transaction instead of a connection, right? So,
Well,
and
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a
mhm,
transaction, but it's
mm,
definitely not a deeper connection because they can still have a connection because that's where they both were when they originally met. But as we grow and over time, when you really want to deepen the level of connection and intimacy and
mm,
truly walk into a sacred spiritual space, this is where all of those things are allowed to bloom. So it's just about recognizing where you are and saying, hey, I just want us to have a deeper connection. But it's not like someone who says, hey, you're rich. Okay, we can be together. And then you lose, that person loses their money and you're just like, oh, sorry about that. Gotta go. It's really, and that's a serious transactional relationship. But, this not knowing how to be intimate and allowing men to open themselves up and allowing a safe space for men to be intimate, this is really a new conversation. You know, these type of conversations have not been had as much, and I'm hoping that it does begin to happen more and more because men do need this safe space. Men do need to feel that they can open up and talk to their partners.
Exactly. Mhm. Amazing. And like if you could give couples one piece of advice to ask themselves before the proposal, just one, then what would it be?
Just one question. Why? Why am I marrying this person?
That's
Yeah.
and for those like who realize that they are not ready, how do they communicate that without destroying the relationship?
By taking a deep breath, take a deep breath, and then admit to that person, I love you very much. I want you in my future, if that's your truth, whatever your truth is, and say, but I'm not ready. And I feel that I need to work on myself and, explain to them what the areas are that you feel that you need to work on yourself in order for you to be ready. And I think that's a wonderful thing when someone can openly admit, I'm not ready for this because it is a huge commitment. It is the rest of your life. And if you're not ready, then you're not ready.
Mm, exactly. Hmm, amazing. Wow. Lovely. LaShawn, I mean, this is such a grounding, eye-opening conversation. And I love like how you strip away the noise and bring people back to what actually matters, like alignment, truth, and the courage to have the conversations that so many of us avoid. So for those who are listening, if you are on the edge of engagement, or even just in the early stages of a relationship, then please give yourself the gift of these deeper talks. The ring is a symbol, but the relationship is the substance.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can connect with LaShawn through her book, I'm Not an Option, and her Before We Go Any Further workbook. So all the links will be in the show notes. And LaShawn, like if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium?
They can reach me through the website before we go any further.com. If you find me on there, yeah, go ahead and fill out the form and we can connect and we can go from there.
Amazing. Yeah. Great. So I'll put all the links into the show notes as mentioned. And with this hope, until next time, this is your host Avik, and this is Pleasure Principles. Go out there, love deeply, and live fully. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.